Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh. I don't know why I'm smiling so much because this is not a podcast to start out smiling.
Yeah, we're going to take a real hard turn because we're talking about The Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer's new film. I was trying to figure out like a description of this. I don't even know like how he sold it in the room or whatever, but like it's a husband and wife trying to raise their family in an idyllic setting. It just so happens that this guy is the Auschwitz commandant and they're living right outside of Auschwitz during World War II and during the mass extermination of Jews. So it's a harrowing subject, but I think that, you know, the angle that he goes with, it makes it infinitely interesting. But I think that what Jonathan Glazer does in this film is he's kind of showing how an inhumane and inhuman person, someone who has the ability to do the things that he did to all of these people and to lead, you know, groups of people to exterminate other groups of people, how they can also have a parallel track in their mind and in their being that like wants to raise a family and wants to like to love their children and their wife. And like that's something that we don't, you know, you read a Wikipedia article on the main character of this film, Hess, and you don't feel that, and this makes it harder to grapple with. So it was tough going into it, but and the other biggest thing that just right off the bat that I'm going to say is that he never shows things that happen inside of the camp, you know, the horrific things that happened inside the camp. But they're always present throughout the whole film and you can't get away from them. So that's another huge choice that he made, and it's affecting throughout the whole film. So
yeah, profound is the word I keep coming back to. It's almost like the only word I can think of to describe any of it, because it is almost too much to take in, but in a very altered sense of too much to take in, because really this is a film about what happens in between people's daily lives. Setting of the table, raking the lawn, going to work, celebrating your birthday. You never really see the beginning or end of what's happening. You see sort of the middle of what's happening. The film opens with them already at the river, right? Mm-hmm. And you
it's
think,
a family outing.
Yeah, it's a family outing. Most films would show you them showing up and them setting up and them presenting what they're doing for this event, playing croquet, whatever it means, swimming. But this doesn't. It shows you the in-between. And then it shows you something profound, which I'm going to use many times. The splitting of the males and females going to two separate places in the river, I guess because that's what they did. And, you know, women bathe differently at a different place than men. But it never shows you them going to the actual river. It just shows them separating. And the time it takes from the opening moment the opening visual moment to the time they separate is very long, at least seemingly long. And that's where I'd like to start. There's almost an overture to this film. There's a long time of black screen time from the moment the note starts.
It helps you like settle into it. It's like you can't look away from whatever's going to be happening. You are here, like especially in the movie theater. I've seen it twice in the theater.
Whoa.
And it is so it's easier to like sink into that than I think it would be if you were watching it at home on a TV, because you'd be like 1 minute into that like black screen and Mika Levy's score, one of a few chunks of score that is in the film from them. People would be like, I'm gonna go like I don't know, I'm gonna get a drink
I have
or
5
something.
more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
like I'm just gonna let it play while I clean up from dinner or whatever. Like no, it just makes you sit in it. So yeah, you're right. And there's really, without any context, you're right. It just looks like a family having a good time at the water. But then I love how he uses right angles. Glazer uses right angles a lot, and so when the car pulls out and it turns onto the road, we see the car coming at us, and the license plate has an SS on it. So you know that this is an official, Nazi SS car, and so that's kind of the first. He does that again later on, once again in the river with a couple of his kids, and you see him, a profile of him fishing, and he's wearing a tank top and his kids are off over somewhere else. And then it cuts to a right angle shot of him that's looking straight on at him, and he's wearing an SS tank top. And you're just kind of like, you take a frame from this film and you're like, what's the big deal? And then you take the next frame and you're like, it's always constantly reminding you who this guy is and what this guy's done, and it won't let you forget it. So yeah,
no, not for a split second. And we often talk about this, about one good idea. All it takes is one good idea. And, I'm not trying to simplify screenwriting by any stretch of the imagination, but one good idea sparks a bunch of different great ideas. And next thing you know, you're writing something down, and next thing you know, you have a screenplay, but it's really essentially one idea. And the idea here, or the thought I had about the idea, is what haven't we seen when it comes to the Holocaust? Now, we've seen many films about this subject matter, and I believe for the rest of our existence and the rest of human existence, they need to be making films about this story and this what happened, because it needs to be retold. But how do you retell it in an original way? And I'm trying to sound respectful to the tragedy that happened. At the same time, I'm trying to analyze a movie, so I never want to misstep or misspeak about showing a disrespect to the subject matter. But this is a new way of talking about this subject matter. The thought that somebody went, well, and by the way, you talked about the house being on the edge of the camp. It's literally up against the fence of the camp. It's not like it's, an acre away. It's not like a road trip away. It's not like a walk away. It's the fence, Auschwitz, and the house. And you see the barbed wire, and you hear things, which is...
Yeah.
It's
that's how
heartbreaking it's heartbreaking, the sounds you hear. And on some level, as they're coming up, and they're interspersed very slowly, and you register it and you deny it. Like, I can't go there right now. But then it's undeniable, and you cannot, when the mother looks out the window and sees the smokestack. By the way, I do want to say this. I don't think this is the type of movie that you can spoil anything with by a big plot twist or anything, but I would like people to know that even speaking about it, in my opinion, can be a spoiler, because just even the simple things that we have talked about so far, I believe should be watched for the first time without any knowledge about them. So that said, I think we should just open the discussion up to the fact that we're going to talk about this movie. And if you haven't seen this movie, it is a must see. See it now. Don't wait. See it now.
And it is available. Like, you can buy it on demand right now. You don't have to go to the movie theater. But like I said, if you're willing to allow yourself to feel these emotions and grapple with this, then it's affecting. It is, profound.
Well, I think you should see it in the theater.
Yeah.
But I understand people's lives. I understand. And I also feel like, because of the information age that we're in, people are not set up for a overture and an orchestration and blackness for as long as they are. That said, if they never move, it will affect you on your tablet, on your phone, on the big screen. It will affect you, because it's daunting how long that blackout or that black in is. It is relentless, and it happens. I when I was watching, I was like, this is long. I already don't like this feeling. I'm uncomfortable, which is good because that's probably what he wanted. But I even thought to myself, for somebody who has the patience that I have for a movie and the idea of what the filmmaker's trying to say, it is about 30 seconds longer than I was like willing to, and I could not take my eyes away from the blackness. I just couldn't do it. And he effectively uses that later on in the film and at the end of the film. It crushes me how affecting it was.
Yeah. Mika Levy's score sets up, it uses a lot of low droning tones, and it sets up the sound design later on in the film, essentially from right off the bat. Once they're at the house next to the camp, there is this constant low frequency humming, and it has to do with machinery that's going on in Auschwitz, and I'm sure a lot of the ways that they disposed of all the bodies and how they burned the bodies and all that stuff. I mean, it is, you can't get away from it. And that's why Glazer made multiple decisions in this film. Number one was that he wasn't going to visually show in anything. Number two was that he was going to have the sound design keep the presence of, because since film is a visual medium, like we're going to be seeing different things in the film, and so our, visually we're not going to get fatigued by what we're seeing, because a lot of the things that you see are beautiful gardens, children playing. I mean, these are just basic things that you're going to run across, throughout your day, even today. But you can never get away from that droning, that low frequency drone in the background, and then also the sounds, the interspersed gunfire and the yelling and all of those things that happen every once in a while. So those along with his visual choice to not shoot on film. He shot using the same cameras that they used for Top Gun Maverick. It's the Sony Venice cameras. And one of the reasons why they used those cameras, the same cameras they used in the cockpits for Top Gun Maverick, is that they were able to make the lens portion of the camera a lot smaller. And they were able to essentially put a bunch of those cameras all around the house and hide the guts of the camera, so that they could put them up against walls and they could put them in the corners and essentially just roll on all of these cameras, so that the actors never really knew when they were being recorded, when they weren't being recorded, what was being recorded, how zoomed in the lens was there, is it a close up on their face? Is it a wide shot of them and of Sandra Hüller and her daughter? What is it? Are they looking at the dog instead of the actor? You don't know. And so it allowed them to live in those characters and try to get a little bit more realism, I guess, for lack of a better word, out of those scenes and out of those characters, and have them improvise a little bit. I'm sure they had. I mean, I know they had a script, but you put all those things together, and you kind of get this real world vibe to a certain extent, where it's number one, it's clinical because it's not romanticized. You don't have like the film grain, the film, popping off the screen. I just saw Magnolia in 35 millimeter last weekend, and that movie is, it's seeing it on film again, seeing any movie on film, actually, like really, really big. I had to sit in the front row too. It was, oof. It was a lot, but there is something about, seeing film, and it's a more organic process, and I did romanticize, and I kind of like felt more excited about it because it was on film. And that's the thing that Jonathan Glazer was going against. There's, film can be beautiful. Film can be arresting and can sweep you up in emotion. He didn't want to make these people in this house look filmic or look like a film, a Hollywood movie. He wanted to go against
Hollywoodized is how I call it.
Yeah.
They make everybody look good.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
glossiness of everybody.
Yeah, they've got the gauze on the lens.
Yeah. Or
no,
Vaseline, or
going against that.
Pulling the camera back when somebody is not as great in HD as the next person. You can see sometimes when people do that, and then they get an up close, and you're like, are they doing that because that guy has that weird like thing, whatever it may be? I don't want to judge anybody's physical thing, but sorry. I'm fascinated. I did not know this thing about the camera. How often has anybody ever done that? Is this like new? Has anybody ever hidden cameras around the set like that and filmed a movie like that?
Well, I know that there's movies that have been shot more like documentary style or more like well, I mean, wasn't Skinamarink, that was one of them, and Paranormal Activity. There's a lot of horror movies that are shot with static cameras, mounted in the corner of a room, and that kind of thing.
But aren't those actors aware where those cameras are because they're the security cameras, the CCTV?
Well, they saw the
type of thing?
cameras. I don't think they like put it inside of a teddy bear. I mean, you could see the cameras. You're not really sure what shot is gonna be. The scene where Hess goes around and turns off all the lights.
Yeah.
And which second time I saw it, I noticed something else about that. So anyway, the scene where he gets out of his office, he goes around and turns off all the lights, and then he sees his daughter in the hallway. That whole him turning off the lights is probably like a, I don't know, minute and a half scene. But those were from all the cameras that were kind of mounted in the house. But I realized the second time I watched it that him seeing his daughter in the hallway is, for me at least, it was his daughter. That's how the sounds and just their proximity to all this horror is affecting her. Like, she can't sleep at night. She's sitting there. I didn't really get it the first time. I wasn't, because that was before some of the other scenes. I think that, like, how one of his sons deals with it,
playing up in the room. Yeah.
Yes. When he's playing up in the room and he's hitting the drum and all this stuff, and he's, telling all his little soldiers what to do and all that. But he does a good job of showing you that even though the parents are trying to, they feel like they're doing a great job raising their kids are affected by this, and they won't, in ways that they won't even probably be able to unpack until way, way later on, because they're kids. But so yeah, that was one of the scenes that you could really tell that the way that because I think some of the cameras even moved, but he used a lot of wide angle lenses and stuff like that. But the clinical nature of how he shot it, I think, is also another way that he was able to differentiate this from Hollywood films.
Well, the absolute freeing aspect of not knowing what camera's doing what shot is fascinating to me. I like that idea. That to me takes the self-consciousness of acting away almost immediately, because I don't know if have you ever stood in front of any of the cameras that you brought at your TV stand? It sucks your soul. Like it's omnipresent. It's like, and then when it's right here, you're like, and
I've never done that.
It's the worst. And you can see yourself reflected, and you're man. As long as you're not looking directly in it, you're okay. But how they did Silence of the Lambs, where they looked right at the camera the whole entire time, forget about it. Like, I can't even imagine it. I can't even. So the idea that he filmed, it makes perfect sense that he would do that, because he is filming everyday stuff, setting the tables, pulling stuff out of the oven, taking care of the dog, turning off the lights,
picking weeds out of the garden.
It's not anything. There is really, other than the scene when they're down at the dock picking up the shoes and they're arguing. Well, she's kind of yelling at him, which she's very good at, by the way. She can stand up to her man. She's done it in 2 films so far this year. But other than that initial conflict between 2 people, there really isn't anything that's set up to be a conflict. When the house girl, keeper, young person comes in,
the Polish servant,
you're not expecting what she says to her. You're not expecting that moment to be that. You're not expecting any of that to happen. And of course, that is the moment when the shoe drops and you're like, oh, this is just a bad human being. And she is, by some of the things she says when the mother shows up, when she said,
the mother is the key to the film. I think
I love it.
The mother
the way
is the
that
key.
handled is brilliant,
because you see the mother has a lot of really telling scenes in the film. And for me, like the thing that kind of like clicked into place for me a little bit was that when they're walking out in the garden and the mother's talking about how she wasn't able to get the curtains, I guess, from this Jewish lady's house that she used to clean. And I was like, aha, like that to me, it was kind of like, I guess I didn't get down that granular to where that's like, because we look at this from a top-down historical view, but when you see that there's, a German non-Jewish woman cleaning a German Jewish woman's house, and then all of a sudden a switch flips and that German Jewish woman is now considered a non-person. And so all of her stuff gets given, and that the way that like the mother just made that leap was like, okay, you know what? I can do this because I'm benefiting from this. And then so she's like, oh, darn it, I didn't get the curtains. Oh, okay. But by the end of her stay, she has reckoned with what is going on. And because she's been confronted with it, and she has refused to say that that's okay. And which is why she leaves. Whereas her daughter,
well, in that same conversation,
totally cool with
she
it.
says that thing about whatever Jews do. I don't know what they're doing, what Jews do. And that right there, if you were to read it, it might not be offensive, or it might not be telling. It might just be a fact about talking about Jewish people or whatever. But the way she just, in a monotone way, says it.
Yeah, dispassionately.
Yeah, it's unimportant to even have these words in my mouth. And because you brought it up and you're my mother, I'm going to talk to you about it, but briefly, because it's unimportant. And maybe that's why the mother has Sandra Hüller's mother has such an interesting reaction to the smells, which is another fact about this movie that I find fascinating. All the questions that were going through my head, one by one, he started answering. Because I thought, what about the smell? What about the ashes? What about
this? At night when it lights up the freaking sky?
Right, exactly. And all of those questions, it's so profound. Sorry, I just had a little bit of a reaction to it because I did not have a direct emotional reaction during the film. Afterwards, driving home, it got me. It got me to think about those small things, because while they're setting the tables and pulling weeds, what are the people on the other side of the wall doing or not doing? Because they no longer are here. And that, of course, is driven home with that museum stuff at close to the end of the film. But when the mother, the grandmother, looks out the window and sees the flames coming out and the smoke coming out at nighttime, I'm not sure she would have had the same reaction if she hadn't worked for the Jewish family that she worked for, because she saw them as human beings at one point. It's not like she could have disconnected from Miss whatever her boss's name was. She was a human being. Now, for the two main characters who live in the house, the father and mother, maybe they never have seen Jewish people as human beings because, one, they don't have it in them, and two, they're awful human beings, and three, they've been taught something that they have been ingrained that these are not humans, that they are vermin, and that they are not due the respect of just being alive. But the grandmother can't, because there's also some
which tells you that there are people out there who know that who know deep in their bones that it's wrong and aren't willing to go along with it. So that's the kind of the kind of group mentality of oh, well, everybody else was doing it, so it's fine.
Sorry to interrupt, but the side note to that is that we can't really let her off the hook that much, though, because she just leaves.
Yep. No, she doesn't try to fix anything.
She doesn't say her opinion or anything. She's out.
But it shows another character doing something different.
Yes.
And other than the two main characters who we are as the viewers, we are with, as the film goers, we are with those two characters, Rudolph and Hedwig, the most. So you will inherently, try to pull as much humanity from a main character as possible. That's why I think people are interested in films, films that have a bad person as a central character or whatever, whether it's Training Day or other films that are centered on the bad guy. It's what kind of humanity can you pull out of that? And then ultimately some filmmakers say nope, no humanity, so I just tricked you, so, or whatever, I just confronted you with that. So
well,
now
as a
deal with it.
compassionate human being, you are trying to find the compassion for these people, and the vulnerability of being a human being shows, at least from my perspective, that you're trying to look for vulnerability and you're trying to look for a feeling of compassion towards these human beings. And you're void of it from moment one because of the SS and because of the license plate and because of all that stuff. And because, I mean, of course, there are milestone moments when he gets on his horse,
yeah,
which is almost humorous in a way, because he literally gets on the horse just to go 5 feet.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, but he's
driving
up higher.
across.
Yeah, he's up higher.
Oh yeah,
so that he
absolutely.
can
I get why.
oversee things.
Yeah,
blah, blah,
I
blah.
get why I didn't mean humorous in like a laugh out loud like way, but in you're a buffoon, dude, and look at you. You look that's silly. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't even mount your horse inside. You have to make sure you're making an interest, So you're trying to figure out how to have feelings towards these characters, but it never really connects. And then you figure out very quickly why. Because you can't, because they're inhuman. They're monsters.
But the scenes that he shoots are the humanity giving scenes.
Happy birthday.
Like happy birthday. He
really
puts his
cool
baby in the
canoe.
in the canoe.
Yeah.
He's like, who wants to go first? And they're playing
and their
with
little
the kids. They have
Sound of Music outfits, you know?
Yeah, the lederhosen or whatever. Yeah. They have the pool party. I mean, with a bunch of other kids. I mean, it's just, they've got a
and the
greenhouse.
spread of food.
Yep.
And hey, let's jump to the greenhouse for just a split second.
Okay.
There's no dialogue in that scene, correct? When she's in there and he comes in, he's bringing out the big heavy poles or wood, and then she gives him a cigarette and he goes to get another one. She goes, sit, and he stops. And you've seen it twice. So you know what the dog does. The dog comes in and then immediately goes, and runs away. And I was like, that had to have been an accident. And if it wasn't an accident, how did they get it to look so natural? If that was a trained dog doing what it was supposed to do, because that dog walks in and goes, nope, and then cruises. And that dog is sort of like the happy thing in the house. Like, the dog doesn't know that all these commanders and people come to celebrate his birthday. The dog doesn't know that the uniforms mean anything. The dog just knows a happy life. But why does the dog walk into that and then goes, and then he's out? It's profound. It's such strong storytelling. It says so much. Just like, sorry, I'm jumping from subject to subject.
Before you leave that, what do you think happens after that scene cuts?
I don't know. I don't know if that's important. Just like we don't know what the letter is supposed to say from the mother.
Oh, we know what the letter says, but but I mean, I think we know. I think I know what the letter says, but I think that they may actually have sex or do some sort of something in that greenhouse right after the scene cuts, because that would be a parallel to Rudolph Hess's scene with the Jewish girl.
Ugh.
So.
Ugh.
But it just shows that it just
harder and harder in this movie. You have got to be kidding me. And
it shows the hypocrisy. It completely shows the hypocrisy of the whole thing.
Well, the fact that you don't see any of it, thank God, but you see him cleaning himself afterwards.
Yes.
And it's so.
But that's paralleled before that scene, we get the scene of him and the kids in the river.
Oh.
And how they clean the kids. And all of that.
Oh, and then the bathtub, the look inside the bathtub. You never see what's inside the bathtub. You never see the remnants. You just see the person looking at it. That is strong storytelling. And I'm not sure we're used to that on so many different levels. We've talked about this. Being spoon-fed, I don't necessarily have a problem with. Tell me what you want me to know, okay? But Jonathan Glazer says, nope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something and you figure out how you feel about it. And you instantaneously have a feeling about it, instantaneously. So what was it about the greenhouse scene that made you think they're going to have sex?
Oh, it's just the fact, number one, that he's doing a job. Number two, that she tells him to stop. Number three, that she gives him a cigarette and I think she lights the cigarette for him. I think she does.
I assumed Well, I mean,
Why would she do so? Like, why would she do that? He is
because
a
she's in
tool
control
for
of
her.
him at the
Well,
house.
there's that, yes.
Yes.
But he's also
Stop, take a break, smoke a cigarette, be quiet, shut up, do what I want you to do.
But why does she care about him like stopping and taking a break? She shouldn't. He's a machine essentially for her. He's the guy who puts up the boards on top of the greenhouse.
Because she has to show him some form of like not sympathy. What is the word I'm looking? Compassion, if you will, that you don't have to work all day. It's time to take a break. Look at me potting plants and hanging out in the greenhouse and smoking cigarettes. Yeah. Okay. You're deemed worthy of a 5-minute break right now because I say so. I'm the commander of this house. She is.
Oh yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, that's her Auschwitz. I mean, it's not Auschwitz, but that's her controlled area. Right.
And in her, well, I could never even pretend to understand what's in her mind. But what I got from it was that the thought ran through my head that if she runs, are you laughing at me?
That's her zone of interest.
Well, I need to talk to you about that too, but hold on a real quick second.
Okay.
Is that what that is? Okay, hold on. So if she runs the household the way that she runs the household, then he can run the camp the way that he needs to run the camp. So he does not have to think or do anything except for open the day and shut the day. And that's what you see him doing. You know, you see him waking up first. You see him smoking first. You see him shutting off the lights at the end of the day. And that happens 3 more times. Once outside the house and then twice inside the house. So she's obviously the commander of that area, the house, and without her doing that job. So I just assumed that scene in the greenhouse was just a good job, take a break. But I find it interesting that your mind went to them having sex. That's interesting to me.
I'm looking from a formal standpoint of like parallels, how like, you know, all we've heard of is Rudolf Hess. Like that's the, you know, historically, but he also raised a family, and for him to raise a family with 5 kids in this scenario, there had to be some sort of someone on the home front, for lack of a better word, at home who was doing all of that. And the sheer proximity of the house to the camp tells you, like, it's a thought experiment. I'm sure that, so the Martin Amis novel Zone of Interest isn't about this. Like, it's about a parallel, he doesn't even use Rudolf Hess's name. He uses another name for the main character, for one of the characters. But it's about like, his wife, that commandant of Auschwitz, the commandant's wife is has a relationship with another guy, I think a Jewish guy, and like he gets jealous, and then there's a couple of things other that go on. Like it really has nothing to do like with this film, other than the main characters, or some of the main characters are the commandant of Auschwitz. That's it. So this one he goes in a different direction with it, but that's the thought experiment. I'm sure after reading that novel, or hearing about that novel, that's the thought experiment that made him flesh this out for 10 years. I mean, a long time. I get it. He's been working on it for a while, and he's probably still in deep thought of it. Well, about and he did on some level. Yeah, he did 2 years of research on Hess and on Auschwitz and on all of it. So yeah, he researched Hess and his family for 2 years. So that's before he even picked up a pen to start, or a word processor to start writing a script. So, I mean, he was very serious about this. Another thing that he did, along with shooting on digital and all that stuff, is that him and his cinematographer, who's Lucas Zal, I don't know how to say his name, he's Polish, and did you see Cold War or Ida? Yes. Okay, he's the cinematographer. I think he was nominated for Cold War. Didn't he win? Maybe he did. Okay. I can look that up too. But he, they decided, to, shoot with only practical light. So sunlight and bounce boards and that kind of stuff. And then inside they were using just bulbs and that kind of stuff, which you can kind of tell, especially at night when he's turning off the lights and stuff like that. So that right there, once again, it goes towards we're not going to Hollywoodize, your word, this film, we're not going to, make it, crank it up to 11 and make it look like a Hollywood film. So Lucas has always been nominated twice. I had to like parallel thought do that. So, so yeah, they decided, since they were only using practical lighting, that we're not going to be able to shoot a lot of stuff at night. So now we can talk about the Polish girl who collected apples and went into the concentration camp and did that. So what did you want to say about that?
Yes.
Okay.
So interesting, because is that night vision? I mean, what is it?
It's a FLIR camera. So it's a heat based camera. So things that are warm show up white, and things that are not warm show up black. And then there's gradations within that. So that's why you can kind of see like show up. It's kind of, you can see her clothes, are a little bit darker than her face. For example. Now, of course once I found out about this, I was like, okay, now how did they make the apples white? So they must have had little fake apples with little hot hands in them or something. I don't know. But there's ways you can kind of fake that. But that was how they differentiated her and the apples from the shovels and the piles of dirt and the
and everything else
and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, those are the only sequences in the movie that you see from beginning, middle, and end. You see a beginning of it, you see the end of it. It's never just in the middle of it. It's always at the beginning of something. You see her gathering the apples and then putting the apples around and then seeing her go home. Now, those are three separate things, but it's not like you just all of a sudden she's there and she's doing something. You have no context. I guess in the beginning a little bit, but you very quickly know what's going on. So it seems like the beginning of a scene versus the middle of the scene, which is the rest of everything else in the film. And for whatever reason, that comforted me. Obviously the idea of what she's doing is comforting on some level, and heartbreaking, and all of the stuff you see is heartbreaking. It's just unbelievable, because you always see in a movie people working and doing the things that they're being forced to do. You never see the remnants, once again, that word, of their actions. You don't see the piles of dirt that they've had to move. You don't see the perspective of how many shovels it takes, or how many ladders it takes to go up or down, or wherever you're going, how big that space is, or where that space is. You never see that. And taking people out of that and putting her into that tells you so much more than you would get if you were to see like a flash forward scene, or even a flashback or whatever, or a present day scene of people working in that at that field or whatever it is. And then you see her distributing the apples at night. That's less affecting, because you on some level have to do all the work in that scene. You have to figure out who she is, what she's doing. Is this a Schindler's List moment, to relate it to another great film about this subject matter with the young girl with the red coat? Is this what's happening here, or what's happening? Then she's doing things and you're not sure what she's doing, and you're like, are those apples? Like, you have to do all the work yourself. He gives you nothing other than what's on the screen, meaning he doesn't spoon feed it. And that to me was so much more devastating and so much more affecting than anything else he could have chosen to do. I think that some people might think the heat vision thing might be a little gimmicky, but I can't see how they would even attempt to say something like that. It makes so much sense what he does there, because the eerie parts of the film should be shot like that. The human side of the film, of the realistic thought that people have to help out people in this situation, should be shot in multi-cameras all around that field and in color and all that other stuff. But it's not. It's the opposite. And to me, I think it's probably the most soul-stirring moment, next to the museum at the end, that this film has. It literally took my breath away. I literally went, because it was just so simultaneously devastating and beautiful. It was just so profound.
Yeah, and it's the most human part of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's why it looks different because the rest of the stuff going on, especially for the two main characters, and the meetings that he has about the cremation chambers and all of that stuff. I mean,
remember that.
Yeah, that stuff is shot is we're confronted with that, but there's no humanity in that. There's there's less than humanity in that. So then you have to differentiate this with that to say that yes, there are people out there who are still care for other people and who are trying to make the best. There is that when she comes back the second time and brings in her bike and her mom's worried about her and I guess the man in their little living quarters, I don't know if it's her dad or who, but starts to kind of like say that poem, which is a real poem. And also this girl in the movie is based on a real child in Poland at Auschwitz at the time who Jonathan Glazer was able to interview. She was 90 years old when he interviewed her, and I think she passed away right about the time the film came out. But so he was able to, to put a little bit of realism in there, and also to show that, I mean, yes, it works for the film, but also like the things like this, she was a part of the resistance, a part of the Polish resistance. And so she did a lot more
in a way we've never seen before.
Just that. Yeah, exactly.
In a way we've never seen in this type of movie before. I mean, there are things similar to that in these type of films, but not like that. Not like that. Yeah. And also the heat vision, I don't know what else to call it. It also lent itself to the danger of the situation.
Yep. And the score too.
Yeah. It's horrifying when she's coming around the corner with her bike and she sees I guess the people who are doing the patrol, and she has to wait just the right amount of time, and she has to go to get around. Oh, it's just heart pounding and just,
puts you in a different place, definitely. Yeah.
So before we end, where do you want to go next?
What were we supposed to talk about?
We're supposed to talk about the zone of interest. So you're saying that area is her zone of interest. I just thought that like his zone of interest is the Auschwitz camp proper, and her zone of interest is the garden and the house and how the house is run, and she kind of like plies her power, when her mom leaves and there's two sets of breakfasts, and she tells the girl to take the breakfast away, and she's like, did you put out two breakfasts to try to embarrass me? And tells her to take it away. And then she says that line, something along the lines of like, I could have you killed, or I could have my husband have you killed. You're lucky I got you.
Yeah. So
you're lucky I pulled you from where I pulled you from. Something along that line.
So that's her lashing out. It's basic stuff. She feels, bad and embarrassed and sad that her mom left. And so she's lashing out at someone else.
And also it shows the pattern of their relationship. This is not the first time the mother's let the daughter down. It's just not.
Oh, okay,
and so she's dejected once again on this like successful, visit, when she's like, look, I'm going to do this here, and I'm doing this there, and I'm doing this there, and it goes right up against the wall, and I'm doing this, and look at this. We're going to have a party. We're going to have all this food. You see the table of food. Look at what I've accomplished. My life is superior to all people. And then the mother just rejects her like she's probably done a million times before, and she's back to being a 10-year-old little girl. Okay, the zone of interest, I was thinking hard about it. There is that scene when that guy is describing the two different chambers, where he's talking about this is where they'll end up, and this is where they go in to. It's kind of hard to talk about and think about it at the same time that it actually is something that happened in our history as human beings, that people were cremated just because of who they were. It's like, it's hard not for me to have some form of emotional reaction to it. Anyway, I don't even know why I'm having that emotional reaction to it, because I haven't so far. That's why. So in that conversation, he says something about this middle part is something of interest. He says that in that scene. So I thought whatever that, there's some kind, I didn't understand the technical breakdown of what they were talking about. All I could focus on is that the chamber ends here. It starts here, and then we put them through here, and then it ends here. That's all I could hear.
It's how the air moves. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's different stages.
But in that discussion, he says this is a new design because of this interest, this point right here. He doesn't say zone of interest, but he said he either says this is the interesting difference, or this part right here is the part of interest. And he says that in that scene. Do you remember that? Am I hearing it? Okay.
Yeah.
That's whatever that is the zone of interest to me. That's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're putting our own things on it, which is good, and we should. Yeah. I did remember that there were different zones in the concentration camp setup. I did a little bit of research. It was like a couple weeks ago. It was after I saw it the first time. So there were different zones. There was Auschwitz, and there were other concentration camps that had different names, and he kind of goes through that close to the end of the movie too, the different places. But there is I guess a German word that was used to delineate the restricted zone around Auschwitz. And it was, I can't say it. It's Interessengebiet. But that could very well be a historical reason to call it that.
It'd be interesting if it's just one of those things that's left up to interpretation.
Yeah. Oh,
because
totally.
I don't think any of those things that we just talked about are wrong, but I don't know if any of them are right. And one last thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and just minor thing, the interesting overhead shots that he does. And it's like three separate times in the movie that he does it. He does it at the meeting, the
boardroom.
Right.
Yep.
And he does it at the party.
Yeah.
And he does it one other place, and I can't remember where it's at now. I can't remember. It's in the beginning of the film before I even noticed that was going to be a thing. And it's interesting. I'm not a big height.
Was it the garden? Right.
Was
the
it
pool?
I think you're right.
So,
yeah, I think you're right. And close to the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And it struck me as a spectacular shot, but I also thought, what is the purpose behind doing that dramatic thing three separate times throughout the film? And then later on, when you hear him talking, and he's talking about being up in the balcony, looking down and thinking how he can gas all those people. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm sitting here looking at the beauty of the statue in the corner and the gold and the spectacular overview of this huge party. He's over there trying to think about how to kill these people in the most efficient way in this big room. And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, in a way, that's a comforting thought that my idea of what that shot was a million miles away from what he was thinking as the commandant or the leader of this camp.
When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So that's
good.
his, that's what he's essentially spent his whole life has gotten him to where he was at that point. And so he's been so singularly focused. He's not going to, and also that's, a dinner party is not where it's not his thing, I guess. So he's doing it because he has to, but the stuff, it seems like the stuff that he's most interested in, or, figuring out how to gas a whole room of people. So,
okay. So I have two more things. Oh, did you have something?
No, I was going to kind of move us towards the end of the film.
Well, I would like to do that, but I also, yes. And this is the end of the film, close to the end of the film, when he does that blackout again for an enormous amount of time. And then you see the pin light or the pinhole light. And you're like, is that a mistake? What is that? I'm not feeling comfortable with any of it. I don't know what this is.
Well, hold on. You know what happens before that though, because that's very important. What happens
where he's going down the stairs?
When he's going down the stairs.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, there's this.
He looks in the darkness.
Yeah.
And that's when we see the pinhole light.
Yeah. And I was not ready for it. I was not ready for it at all. And I thought, how do you have the respectful ending that you need in a film like this? You need to represent on some level the atrocity that happened. You need to show people again all those shoes, all those glasses, all those teeth. And they talk about the teeth in the film early on. Unbelievable. And the obsession the young boy has with looking at them at night. Most kids his age are looking at comic books, and he's looking at people's teeth. So I was not expecting such a drastic turn into reality. And then I wasn't expecting it to turn back into the reality of the film that we knew up to that point. I wasn't expecting any of it. And literally, of course I breathed because, I have to breathe, but I'm not sure I remember anything about being a human being at that point. Like, I don't remember hearing my breath. I don't remember hearing. I don't remember seeing. All I remember is what was in front of me. And once again, that sequence is profound. Sorry, it's the word. Because you see people doing everyday things for the upkeep of that museum. And the sound of the vacuum cleaner and the sound of the window being cleaned and just the sound of everybody preparing for the day to open the museum or close, I'm not sure, probably open. And while you see these exhibits that at some point are the main shots, but most of that sequence, they're the background shot. Mm-hmm. And that something about it, man, I just almost cussed. It kind of messed me up, dude. It messed me up.
That's also clinical. That whole, all of those shots, and there's no treatment on the sound. It's very echoey, and you have this. So you get anachronism in there. So you get something that was built, it was purpose built in the 1940s to do one thing, and you have a shop vac in there, and you have people cleaning it, and you have people taking great pride with making sure that area is pristine and making sure that area will be open and will be available for people to come and do what, to a small degree, Jonathan Glazer's trying to do is to help us as the film goers to confront our history as humans, as the human race, and a small portion of our history, but a big portion of our history. So, and the reason why they do that, the reason why they keep it clean, the reason why they keep it open is to prevent that type of thing from happening ever again. Especially, I mean, good God, to that scale, it's mind boggling, the amount of people that were killed in such a short period of time. It's just amazing. So,
yet again, an original way to show that, because we've seen those images, and
sure,
they don't stop being affecting. They just don't.
But in films, in Hollywood films,
yeah,
we've seen them in context of a period piece like Schindler's List, which is a necessary film, and it is an effective film, and it is a great deterrent, I think. But also, this film has a place too, and those shots in this film have a place. So yeah, that's and then I love that he cuts back. So that
I was shocked by that.
No, because the last frames of the film, the fact that he can't puke, the fact that he can't affect a physical reaction from what he's done, it tells you. It'd be one thing. It would be, I think it might have been, for lack of a better word, cathartic for the audience to be like, oh, he's human. But no, he's still going to keep going. He's still going to keep doing what he's doing. And he's still going to keep going down those stairs, every single stair, even into the darkness, even into where we can't even see, because the light stops when he keeps going. So that's the reason to cut back.
Well, I didn't mean necessarily shocked that he should have not kept going. It wouldn't have been the first 100 choices I thought he was going to make. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he does go back to it is amazing. And so you're saying when he's going down that last time and he seems to puke, he really doesn't puke. He's just having some kind of like dry heave type of situation.
Yeah, he's like a dry heave, and then he kind of like spits a little bit. But could you imagine like the enormity of all of his actions, like hitting him physically, like as like what someone who isn't like super broken in their head, in their mind, in their body, that what that would do to them, like it would be all encompassing and debilitating. But he still goes down those stairs.
So you just watched almost all of Jonathan Glazer's films, right?
We could do a whole nother podcast on Jonathan Glazer. He's we don't talk about him very often because he doesn't work.
Why?
Because he doesn't work. He spends 10 years doing this.
Well, there you go.
There's another filmmaker that did that, and it was Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
So he definitely borrows. In fact, I have a quote here. When talking about Stanley Kubrick, he says, quote, "I've picked his pockets, really. People politely say homage, but I probably stole his wallet." So he's very upfront. We didn't
Smartest person to steal from.
We've
He's
talked
smart enough to, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about his framing of shots, and he's very symmetrical with his shots, which I'm sure you noticed. We did talk about the 90-degree shots. That's something that Stanley Kubrick did all the time. He also does this great thing about like exploring different genres. Like a Jonathan Glazer movie is not a gangster movie. A Jonathan Glazer movie is not a historical drama.
An alien movie.
Yeah, a Jonathan Glazer movie is not an alien movie. Jonathan Glazer decided to make a sci-fi movie. He decided to make a gangster movie. He decided to make a historical drama, and he decided to put his own thing on it in the same way that Kubrick does. So, I mean, you can't. It's one of those things where it's like if it tips over into his obsession, then we know that we're gonna get something special. I think because the only movie I hadn't seen of his before I did this rewatch was Birth, and I guess it was somewhat maligned or greatly maligned when it came out. Nicole Kidman starred in it, about a 10-year-old kid who says that he's her husband who died 10 years ago. So I found that there were certain shots that were really great in it. I think that the kernel of the idea is infinitely interesting, and I think that the commitment that everybody had, Nicole Kidman, Jonathan Glazer, on down. Arliss Howard, speaking of Stanley Kubrick, Arliss Howard played in Full Metal Jacket, and he plays in Birth. So, but I did kind of like try to like ball up all of these movies into one, like, what is Jonathan Glazer interested in? Because Jonathan Glazer makes Nike commercials, and he makes Apple commercials, and he makes Radiohead videos, and he made the Jamiroquai Virtual Insanity video, which is so cool. He stays busy, and he can keep himself engaged. So why is it that he's decided to make, instead of saying like, why is it that he's only decided to make 4 movies? I was mainly going into it saying, why is it that he decided to make these 4 movies? And so I was trying to draw some parallels between certain things. And it seems like he's very interested in our perception of others and the power that they hold in our mind, especially with his first 3 films, because you've got the Don Logan character played by Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast, who, much like Harry Lime in The Third Man, you don't see him, you hear about him before he shows up. And once he's there, he's undeniably there. And you can't look away, and you can't get away from him. He is just the perception of that person is huge. But who's he played by? Ben Kingsley. This guy who's like, 5'0", but he just takes over the screen in an amazing performance. But ultimately in that movie, you kind of see that character, he may be perceived to be one thing, but he doesn't necessarily have to be that thing. So I'm trying not to do spoilers. Similarly in Birth, there is another character who's, there's a perception of that character. It's how that character is perceived by other people, not what that character is in real life, but how the character is perceived by other people. And then in Under the Skin, a bunch of guys just get really tied up with Scarlett Johansson, and it doesn't end up well for him. And that's the first half of the movie, but that's kind of part and parcel with that film. So it's a little bit harder to wrench this one into that, because I think this one is a little bit different.
All I wanted to know about was, but thank you. No, I mean to sound like that was a bad thing that you just went through. I brought it up. But the heavy one note ominous sound in Zone of Interest. Like that isn't even close to how daunting it is when you're in the movie theater. It's similar to some of the way he does things in Under the Skin, right?
Same score, same composer.
Okay. What about Birth and Sexy Beast? It's not in those.
Birth is very heavy on classical music, previous classical music. There's Wagner in there. There's,
but it's not this sound that you can't get out of, right? It's not that one.
It's not an electronic or synth type thing. Sexy Beast utilizes previously recorded music, but yeah, there's less of that. There's definitely.
I was trying to think because I've seen all 4 of those films too, and much maligned Birth is because of the tub scene. It just is. That's the way it is.
Yeah,
and I get the controversy.
Okay. Yeah.
The controversy's worthy of a discussion.
Sure.
But I was trying to think, what's the thumbprint? But really, other than a feeling, like Kubrick, there aren't any subject thumbprints. There's not one subject those people were interested in that they continued to tell throughout their entire career, which I have no problem with. If you can find a way to tell the same story in a bunch of different ways, then that's kind of brilliance in its own way. But when I was hearing that note, that sound in Zone of Interest, I was like, I'm wondering if I could have figured out this is the guy who directed Under the Skin. I was wondering if I could figure out this is the guy who directed Sexy Beast. I'm not sure, because Sexy Beast is a much more character developed conversation piece between actors than it is between characters than anything else in Birth, sort of. But really, the dialogue in Sexy Beast is much bigger than most of his other films. So that's not a connection. I was trying to figure out, but there was a sense that I knew that this was a Jonathan Glazer film. I mean, I know that it was because I know him and I know his movies. But I halfway think if I didn't know that going into it, I would have had some kind of sense memory triggering something that I would come out of Zone of Interest going, it's like when you see an actor and you don't really recognize them immediately, and then you backtrack in your mind, who is that person? Where do I know them from? And then sometimes you have to go to IMDb to look them up, and you go, oh, that's how I know that actor. Yeah. I think I would have gotten that sense from the Zone of Interest. I think I would have.
I think that the longer we have with Jonathan Glazer and the more films he decides to make, I think we'll be able to, because I do think that I can kind of look at that I felt like I could look at a Kubrick movie and be like, okay, yes, there are certain boxes that are checked, and they're not even, well, obviously, like we said, they're not subject matter boxes. They're not particular character boxes or, script-based boxes, but they somewhat are like shot-based boxes or lens choice boxes or lighting in certain, that's not even the case with lighting.
Yeah,
he has very even lighting in 2001, and he's got very stylized lighting in Barry Lyndon. So
and very stylized lighting in Eyes Wide Shut, because Christmas has never looked like that on film before, ever. Yeah. But there is still one thing that connects all of them: nothing. The fact that there isn't a similarity between those films is the thumbprint, which I think is extremely hard to do. I mean, I don't know technically how to do that kind of filmmaking, but for me as an audience goer, as a film lover, all of that stuff, technical stuff that you said could describe Kubrick, is all a feeling to me. All of the lighting comes across as a feeling. Like I feel almost like I'm suffocating in Barry Lyndon. Something about that fireplace and those candle lights and not being able to see in the corner, something about it makes me, I can't breathe really well during that film. And it's because of the way he chose to do the natural lighting. Anyway, off subject, but sort of similar. It was interesting to me when that first note, and people jumped. They were like, wait, what is that? And you could feel the heaviness weighing down the room during Zone of Interest. Like you could feel people going, what is this? Is this what? Stop. Okay, stop. What? Okay, no. Okay, wait. what? And also during the heat vision scenes, you're expecting something much more devastating to happen, much more ominous to happen because of that soundtrack. And the fact that the girl has to do that is the ominous thing. The
and
fact
also
that she has to plant the apples for people to not starve
and also, yeah, the fact that she did it multiple times in the film tells you that like this is not a one-off thing. Like she does this all the time. So that, I mean, that's another, part of the visual language of repetition. That's like, if you see somebody do something once, it could be an anomaly, but if you see them do it twice, you can kind of assume that there's a pattern that is formed. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see what he does next. But at the same time, like if he takes the same amount of carry that he did with this film, with the next film, like it's probably not coming out next year. So it's, we'll just have to see. I say that, and like Paul Thomas Anderson is shooting a movie right now in Sacramento where I used to live. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's turning things around a little bit faster than he used to. So that's good. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.